The sky darkened as massive silhouettes loomed above, their metallic hulls cutting through the evening clouds like jagged knives. Earth's atmosphere groaned under the weight of alien ships that filled the horizon. The first salvo came without warning, a sonic boom shook buildings to their foundations, the shockwave reverberating through the very bones of the planet. The Xel'kura had arrived. General Adam Larkin watched the display with quiet intensity, his eyes narrowing as the fleet of alien vessels, sleek and deadly, descended toward Earth's major cities. These creatures, the Xel'kura, had been watching humanity for decades, their sophisticated technology leaving them with little more than disdain for the primitive species inhabiting this blue planet. The aliens' arrogance was palpable, their belief that humanity's engineers were nothing more than overhyped tinkers of broken machines now written into the annals of their conquest. On the monitor, Commander Collier, the leader of the Xel'kura fleet, issued his first communication, a transmission that came not with a plea for surrender, but a cold, calculated command. Your species has failed. Prepare to submit to the inevitable. Your engineers are overrated, and your civilization is weak. Larkin's hand clenched around the edge of the table. The Xel'kura were not here for negotiation. This was a declaration of war. We don't negotiate with invaders, he muttered under his breath, though his words were for his own ears alone. He straightened his back, his thoughts already racing through the protocol he had rehearsed countless times but had never hoped to use. The GDC headquarters, an underground fortress in the Rockies, buzzed with activity. Screens flickered with incoming data, military advisors speaking in hushed tones while strategists pored over every available map. The world was bracing for the worst. Earth's defenses, far from the technological marvels of the invaders, were on the brink of collapse. The Xel'kura ships were not only enormous, they were armed with weapons capable of tearing through the most advanced human armor. Beside Larkin stood Dr. Rachel Bennett, an engineer whose reputation had spread across the globe for her breakthroughs in defense technology. But this, even for her, was something new. The Xel'kura didn't just possess better weapons, they wielded an entirely different kind of warfare, one humanity had never faced. We need to move fast, Larkin said, turning to Dr. Bennett, his voice steady despite the anxiety swirling in his chest. What do we have? Bennett's hands flew over the holographic displays, her brow furrowed in concentration. Nothing enough to face them head-on, General. Our top defenses are barely holding against their drones. The weapons, they don't just destroy, they disintegrate. The Xel'kura could wipe out our entire fleet in minutes. Larkin stared at her, his mind grinding through the possibilities. For years, humanity had been preparing for war, but not for this. Not against an opponent who saw their military might as a mere inconvenience. He knew what was at stake. And he knew that whatever came next, it would have to come from them. We can't let them take Earth, he said, the weight of his words sinking deep into the room. We can't let them think we're weak. Dr. Bennett's fingers hovered over the controls before she looked up at him. We need to think differently. Humanity's strength isn't in matching their technology, it's in adapting, innovating. We've never won by following their rules. We've always found our own. Larkin met her gaze, a flicker of hope kindling within him. Then we adapt. We'll need everything you've got. This time, we'll fight like we've never fought before. A sudden blast outside shook the building, a reminder that time was running out. The first wave of Xel'kura drones had launched their assault, and the city below was already burning. Commander Larkin, came a voice through his comm, the enemy is breaking through our perimeter defenses. We can't hold them for long. He turned to Dr. Bennett. Get to the command center. We need to start deploying whatever we have. Every minute counts. Bennett nodded sharply, her expression hardening. I'll be ready. The weight of the situation settled heavily on Larkin's shoulders. The battle for Earth was no longer a matter of if, it was a matter of how. His fingers brushed the side of his helmet, adjusting the fit as he moved toward the doors. It was time to lead, time to show humanity's strength wasn't just in their weapons, but in their refusal to back down. Prepare for the next phase, Larkin said, his voice calm but firm. This is our fight now. As the first wave of alien forces rained down on the city, General Larkin stepped into the command center. He had no illusions about what was to come, but one thing was certain: humanity would never kneel. The war had begun, and they would make sure the Xel'kura understood that Earth was not their easy conquest. The low hum of the emergency alarms reverberated through the corridors of the underground GDC headquarters. General Larkin stood at the command center's main table, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge, eyes scanning the tactical display. Earth's forces were rapidly losing ground. The Xel'kura drones had already overwhelmed the northern perimeter and were now pressing toward the heart of the city. The human resistance, though fierce, felt like a fleeting moment of defiance against a force that could not be stopped. "General," came the voice of Lieutenant Harris from the communications array. "The enemy is advancing. We can't hold the line much longer." Larkin's jaw clenched. His mind raced through every strategy, every plan they had, but nothing was enough. Nothing could stand up to the Xel'kura's superiority. Even their most advanced tech, systems they'd spent decades perfecting, was crumbling under the alien onslaught. He turned to Dr. Rachel Bennett, who stood across the room, staring intently at a holographic projection of the battlefield. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes were sharp, calculating. The weight of the situation had pushed her to the edge, but like Larkin, she refused to show weakness. "We need a way to disrupt their technology," Larkin said, his voice firm but edged with urgency. "Do we have anything that can cripple their communications or weapon systems?" Bennett took a steadying breath, then shook her head. "Their systems are too advanced. I've been trying to analyze their technology, but it's unlike anything we've ever seen. It's not just about firepower, there's something more. Their weapons seem to adapt to our countermeasures in real time." Larkin cursed under his breath. "Great," he muttered, pacing in frustration. "We're up against a species that can predict our every move. Where's the hope in that?" Bennett didn't flinch. "We're not done yet," she said. "Not while we still have time." The flickering holographic image of Earth's cities was overlaid with moving red dots, indicating the advancing alien forces. Humanity's defenses were almost entirely pushed back, and it wouldn't be long before the enemy descended fully into the urban centers. "General," came a new voice over the comm, cutting through the tension. "This is Major Wallace. We've intercepted a transmission, an encrypted message from the Xel'kura command. We're decoding it now." Larkin felt a spark of hope. This could be the break they needed. "Get it on screen," he ordered. Moments later, the transmission was displayed on the central monitor. The voice was alien, smooth and condescending. "Your resistance is futile. Your engineering is inferior. We have seen your feeble attempts to repel us, and yet, you persist. The time for surrender is upon you." The message ended with a flicker, and then an image of Commander Collier filled the screen, his cold, calculating gaze fixed on the camera. "Consider this your final warning. We will be merciful if you yield now. Otherwise, your world will burn." Bennett narrowed her eyes. "This is it. The Xel'kura are not just trying to conquer, they're toying with us. They want to break us before we even have a chance to fight back." Larkin stood still, his fists tightening at his sides. He knew this battle was never going to be easy, but something in Collier's words ignited a deeper fire in him. "They think they can break us. They think we'll fold. I won't let them get away with it," he said, his voice low but certain. He turned back to Bennett. "You said we need to think differently. What have you got? Give me anything, anything at all." She hesitated, her fingers hovering above the console. "I've been looking into Earth's history. There's a pattern: whenever humanity faces extinction, we don't just survive. We adapt. We fight back in ways no one expects." Larkin's gaze hardened. "And you think we can do that again?" Bennett looked up, her expression resolute. "I don't think. I know." Larkin nodded. "Then let's give them something they won't see coming." The tension in the command center grew palpable as Bennett worked, eyes flickering between the various data streams and schematics. She was searching for something, anything, that could disrupt the Xel'kura's technological advantage. "General," Dr. Bennett said, breaking the silence. "There's a theory I've been exploring, something based on electromagnetic interference. If we can overload their systems, short-circuit their communications, we might stand a chance. The problem is, our existing tech is too outdated to generate the necessary power." Larkin rubbed his chin. "You're saying we need to generate something massive, like a pulse strong enough to knock them offline?" "Exactly. But we need the infrastructure. And we need time." She shot a glance at the advancing alien forces on the map. "Time we don't have." Larkin's mind churned. He glanced at the clock on the wall. A few hours at most before the Xel'kura's final assault began. Time. We need time. "Then we make our own time," he said. "If they think they can predict us, they're about to find out how wrong they are." Outside, the world continued to crumble. Cities burned. Humanity's defenses were nearly overwhelmed. But within the command center, a quiet but potent resolve was forming. Larkin's plan was risky, but it was their only shot at survival. As he stood beside Bennett, watching the city burn on the screen, he knew one thing for sure: Earth's engineers might have been underestimated by the Xel'kura, but humanity's true strength was in its unwavering will to fight, to adapt, and to never surrender. And they were about to prove it. The ticking of the clock was all that filled the silence in the command center. General Larkin stood still, his eyes fixed on the glowing map that showed the advance of the Xel'kura forces, creeping ever closer to the heart of the last human stronghold. The glowing red dots signified their drones, moving like a wave of fire sweeping across the land. "Sir," a voice broke his reverie. Lieutenant Harris's voice was tight with urgency. "The Xel'kura are initiating their final offensive. They'll be in position to strike within the hour." Larkin's fingers tightened into fists, his nails biting into the palms of his hands. The countdown had begun. Behind him, Dr. Rachel Bennett moved with swift precision, her face pale but determined as she connected various cables and systems, preparing for the final stage of their plan. The electromagnetic pulse was their last hope, if it could be triggered in time. But time was a luxury they no longer had. Bennett's voice cut through the mounting tension. "It's ready. We have one shot at this. The pulse generator is primed, but we need to release it when the drones are close enough to ensure the disruption reaches them." Larkin turned to face her, his gaze unwavering. "And how close is close enough?" "Too close for comfort," she replied, her voice steady despite the stakes. "The EMP won't just disable their drones. It'll disable everything connected to their network, communications, weapons, shields. But the power required to unleash it is significant. It'll take down a lot of our systems too, including our own defenses." Larkin felt the weight of the decision press down on him. The lives of countless civilians, the future of humanity, it all rested on a single, desperate gamble. "How much of our infrastructure will be compromised?" he asked. "A few critical systems. Our communications, our radar systems, but nothing we can't survive without, as long as we time it right." The pressure was suffocating. Yet, there was no other option. This was the only chance they had. "Get ready," Larkin said, his voice firm, his mind already making calculations. He knew this was a one-way ticket to the unknown. They had no idea how the Xel'kura would react, or whether the pulse would even work. In the minutes that followed, the command center became a flurry of activity. Engineers scrambled to secure power, officers double-checked the pulse generator's activation sequence, and soldiers braced for impact. Larkin remained at the heart of it all, moving from one station to another, offering calm words where they were needed, but his mind was never at rest. His thoughts, however, drifted to Rachel. He'd seen her under pressure before, but never like this. Never when the entire fate of their species rested on her ability to pull off a miracle. She'd become more than just the brilliant mind behind their countermeasures, she had become the symbol of humanity's resilience. She caught his gaze, and for a moment, their eyes locked. He saw the exhaustion in her face, the strain of someone who had pushed their limits farther than anyone should have to. But there was something else there too: determination, hope. It was the same fire that had burned in humanity's brightest moments throughout history. And it was what was keeping them alive. "General," Harris said again, snapping Larkin from his thoughts. "The drones are almost within range. We need to make the call." Larkin turned to Bennett, meeting her gaze once more. "Do it." The pulse generator hummed to life. Every screen in the room flickered as the power surged, the heartbeat of the machine reverberating in their bones. Then, the countdown began. 30 seconds, Harris said. Larkin gripped the edge of the console, feeling his heart beat in sync with the ticking clock. The Xel'kura were about to strike. Their drones were within the optimal range, and everything hinged on whether the pulse would succeed or fail. 15 seconds. The room fell into an unnatural quiet. Even the emergency alarms, once blaring with relentless urgency, seemed to fade into the background. All eyes were locked on the map, watching as the red dots neared Earth's last line of defense. 5 seconds. Larkin held his breath. He could hear the hum of the pulse generator building to a crescendo, the tension becoming unbearable. "Now," Bennett ordered. Everything went still. The pulse exploded through the air, a wave of invisible force crashing into the alien drones. The first few seconds were chaos, flashes of static filled the air as the drones wavered, lost in the electromagnetic disturbance. But then, as if a switch had been flipped, the world went silent. The drones halted mid-flight, their coordinated attack broken. The battlefield froze. Larkin stared at the screens, his mind racing to process what he was seeing. The pulse had worked. The Xel'kura's flawless technology, the weaponry they'd so arrogantly paraded around Earth, was shattered. A breath escaped his lips, but there was no time to savor it. The first wave of Xel'kura ships was still descending, their massive forms looming like giants in the sky. And now, Earth had a fighting chance. "Prepare for counterattack," Larkin commanded, his voice now sharp, unwavering. "Let's show them what humanity can do." Bennett turned to him, her face glowing with the same fire that had ignited the resistance. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. The Xel'kura had underestimated humanity before. But now, they were about to learn that Earth was not a prize to be taken so easily. The ground trembled beneath Larkin's boots as he stood at the base of the command tower, watching the sky turn black with the approach of the Xel'kura armada. The city had fallen silent, the final breaths of humanity hanging in the balance. All around him, soldiers moved like machines, preparing for the worst, hoping for the best. The EMP had given them a moment of breathing room, but it was only that, a moment. "General," Harris said, his voice strained, pulling Larkin from his thoughts. "The enemy is regrouping. They're adapting faster than we expected. If we don't make a move now, they'll overwhelm us again." Larkin's eyes were fixed on the massive Xel'kura ships descending through the darkened sky, their massive forms blotting out the stars. These were the final moments, the ones that would define humanity's future. He turned to face Harris, his face hard and resolute. "We don't wait," he replied. "We fight." The war room was a hive of activity, every surface covered with maps, data streams, and tactical plans. Dr. Rachel Bennett stood beside Larkin, her fingers dancing across a holographic interface, plotting the course of Earth's final counteroffensive. The hum of technology was drowned out by the weight of their situation. A few hours ago, they had pulled off the impossible. Now, they had to survive long enough to see that miracle lead to victory. "General, if we push forward with the full assault now, we'll be exposed," Bennett said, her voice tinged with urgency. "We need to use the terrain, use the city itself as a weapon. Draw them in, make them overestimate their advantage." Larkin's gaze swept over the blueprints of the city, the intricate network of streets, rooftops, and underground passages. He could hear the thrum of his own heartbeat in his ears. This was their last chance. He turned to her, his expression unwavering. "We don't have the luxury of time to be subtle. The Xel'kura have seen what we can do, and they won't underestimate us again. If we hesitate, we're dead. Bennett's eyes narrowed, but she nodded. Agreed. We'll need every bit of firepower we can muster. Larkin made a quick decision. Gather all available units. We attack at dawn. The battle for Earth began anew as the sun's first light broke over the horizon, painting the sky with hues of crimson and gold. Humanity's soldiers, now bolstered by the surprise success of their EMP strike, surged forward into the streets, their armored exosuits gleaming beneath the fading night. Every man and woman knew what was at stake, they could feel it in the air, thick with tension and the smell of burning debris. Larkin was at the front, leading the charge with a steady hand and a resolute heart. His eyes scanned the battlefield ahead, looking for any sign of weakness in the Xel'kura's formation. But the enemy had learned. Their tactics were more precise now, their movements deliberate. The drones had regained some of their power, though not all, and the Xel'kura had adapted their strategy. They're splitting their forces, Bennett's voice came over the comm. They're trying to force us into a pincer maneuver. It's a classic Xel'kura move. Larkin's lips curled into a thin smile. Then let's give them a lesson in human strategy. He keyed into his comm system. All units, adjust your formation. Hold the line and draw them in. We have them exactly where we want them. The ensuing clash was nothing short of catastrophic. Explosions rang out across the battlefield as human soldiers engaged the Xel'kura with a ferocity born of desperation and grit. Gunfire echoed through the streets, the crackle of energy weapons mixing with the whine of drones as they retaliated. The ground beneath Larkin's feet shook with the force of the combat, but he never wavered. The Xel'kura were powerful, but humanity was relentless. For every drone that fell, for every piece of alien technology that crumbled under the weight of humanity's ingenuity, the soldiers of Earth gave a rallying cry. It was not the cry of a defeated species, but of one who refused to surrender. Larkin pushed forward, his breath coming in sharp gasps as he fought through the chaos. He had seen the look in his men's eyes, fear, yes, but also something more, something deeper. It was the fire of survival. It was hope. General, we need more firepower, Harris called, as he appeared beside him, his rifle smoking from the onslaught. The Xel'kura are regrouping, there's too many of them. Larkin's eyes darted across the battlefield. They were being pushed back. The Xel'kura had adapted, and now they were outnumbering humanity's forces. They needed a decisive blow. The EMP had bought them time, but time was running out. Rachel. Larkin barked into his comm, we need something bigger, anything. We can't hold them like this. There was a brief pause before Bennett's voice crackled through the static. Hold on. I have something. From the rear of their lines, a series of missiles launched into the sky, trailing fire as they streaked toward the advancing Xel'kura. For a moment, the battlefield held its breath. The first missile exploded in a brilliant flash, followed by another, and another. Each blast sent shockwaves through the alien formation, throwing them into disarray. Then, the sound of it, a mighty roar. Humanity's roar. Larkin looked back to see Bennett, standing beside the control console, her hands raised in triumph. She had found the weapon they needed. A surge of renewed strength filled his veins. Keep pushing! Larkin shouted, his voice breaking through the chaos. This is our world. We're not losing it today. The tide had turned. The Xel'kura, stunned by the power of humanity's final weapon, faltered. Their drones struggled to regain control, their communications shattered by the EMP, their strategic advantage slipping from their grasp. In the heart of the battlefield, General Larkin felt something he hadn't felt in days, hope. The fight wasn't over. But humanity had given the Xel'kura a message. They were not just a species to be conquered. They were survivors. They were warriors. And they would never give up. The first light of victory was tinged with the smoke of destruction. The battlefield, once teeming with the chaos of alien and human forces clashing, now lay in silence. The hum of weapons had subsided, leaving only the eerie crackling of fire and the distant rumble of falling debris. The Xel'kura were in retreat, their once mighty armada shattered, but humanity had paid a heavy price for this victory. Larkin stood amidst the ruins of the city, his eyes scanning the wreckage. His battle-worn armor was scorched, and his face, though grim, bore a glimmer of relief. The war was not over yet, but they had bought themselves time. The alien threat had been beaten back, at least for now. "General," Harris called, his voice still hoarse from the battle. He approached, his armor dented and scratched, but his posture was unwavering. "The Xel'kura are regrouping on the outskirts. They'll be back." Larkin nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. "We know. But we've struck a blow they won't recover from quickly. They thought we were easy prey. Now they'll think twice." Harris glanced around, his gaze taking in the countless fallen soldiers, both human and alien. "At what cost, sir? Look at what we've lost. Look at the city. It's nothing like it was." Larkin clenched his jaw, his eyes hardening. The destruction was undeniable. The once thriving city was now reduced to smoldering ruins, its skyline broken. But he couldn't afford to mourn the fallen, not yet. Not when there was so much left to do. "We fight on," Larkin said, his voice steady. "For every person lost, for every building destroyed, we fight. That's how we honor their memory. We finish this. We take Earth back." The war had taught Larkin many lessons, none more profound than the cost of survival. Humanity's resilience, the courage to fight against a seemingly unstoppable force, had won them this victory, but it had come at a price they could never fully repay. As the days passed, the streets began to fill again with the living, their faces tired but determined. They had rebuilt once, and they would do it again. Inside the command center, Dr. Rachel Bennett stared at the data streams, her expression unreadable. The EMP strike had been a success, the weaponry more effective than anyone had anticipated. But even she knew that a single victory didn't guarantee an end to the war. The Xel'kura had suffered heavy losses, yes, but their intelligence and adaptability were unmatched. They would return. They always did. Larkin entered the room, his boots heavy against the metal floor. "What's the status?" Bennett glanced up, her eyes momentarily weary. "We've crippled their communications, but they've begun rerouting their command structures. They're already forming new strategies. We don't have much time before they come at us again." "Then we use that time," Larkin said, stepping closer to the holographic map. "We need to keep them on the defensive. Hit them where they least expect it." He paused, his fingers brushing over the map, pinpointing weak spots in the Xel'kura's formations. "We've shown them that we can fight back, that we won't be broken. But we can't stop now. We need to end this, Rachel. For good." Bennett was silent for a moment, her gaze fixed on the map. She had seen the same thing Larkin had in the aftermath of their victory. The price was steep, but if humanity's defiance was to mean anything, they had to press on. "All right," she said finally, her voice steady once more. "Let's end it." The final assault began as the Xel'kura regrouped on the outskirts of the city, unaware that humanity had already prepared their next strike. Using guerrilla tactics learned from the previous battles, Larkin and his team launched a series of surprise attacks, forcing the Xel'kura into disarray. The streets became a maze of destruction as humanity's forces pushed forward, using every inch of the city's infrastructure to their advantage. The Xel'kura's once confident advance turned into a desperate retreat. It was a battle of endurance now, of outlasting and outthinking the enemy. Larkin was everywhere at once, leading squads, coordinating fire support, and ensuring that every soldier knew their part. The tactical genius he had honed in countless campaigns was now fully on display. He wasn't just a soldier, he was a symbol, a living testament to humanity's spirit. As the final hours of the battle wore on, Larkin found himself in the heart of the Xel'kura's encampment. The remaining alien forces were cornered, their retreat blocked by the city's defenses. But there was one last obstacle, an enormous Xel'kura war machine, bristling with weaponry and seemingly indestructible. It had been their last hope of turning the tide, but humanity had other plans. "General," Harris's voice came over the comms, "we've got a problem." The war machine is charging its main cannon. It's going to level the whole sector. Larkin's gaze locked on the towering machine. His pulse quickened, but his mind remained sharp. There was no more time for planning. It was time to act. Get the team in position. We're taking it down. The final charge was like a surge of electricity. Humanity's forces poured into the war machine's vicinity, their weapons blazing with fire. The sound of explosions reverberated through the streets, and the war machine's cannon fired. But it missed. Just by a hair. Larkin's squad was in position, climbing up the twisted wreckage of the alien behemoth, and in one final, desperate push, they planted the charges that would bring the enemy's last hope to the ground. The explosion was deafening. The war machine crumbled, and the Xel'kura's resolve shattered. The battle was won. The war, for now, was over. In the days that followed, the people of Earth began the long process of rebuilding. The price had been high, but humanity had proven something far more important, that no matter how fierce the enemy, no matter how dire the odds, humanity would never give up. And as Larkin stood at the edge of the city, looking out over the ruins and the horizon, he knew one thing for certain: this was just the beginning.